If you've been sitting there thinking, I don't know if I'm ready for the meds journey yet, or your kiddo just can't tolerate them, listen up. NeuroNeeds was created by a medical geneticist, board-certified pediatrician, and ADHD dad who hit the same wall when his own kiddo couldn't handle stimulants. He built a science-backed line of nutritional support to help fill the gaps where meds just can't. So if treatment feels scary or you're not sure where to start, NeuroNeeds might just be the middle ground your family's been looking for. Learn more at neuroneeds.com. Okay, Chaos fam, grab your caffeine and put your chaos on the back burner for just a minute, because today's guest is one of those unicorn humans who actually gets us. Like, not just in theory, but in the trenches, face to face, with the kids who make teachers question their life choices and parents question our sanity. Kate Panfile is a certified Learning Disabilities Teacher Consultant, an academic coach, and basically the translator every neurodivergent family wishes came standard with the IEP process. She's spent years working directly with the kids who learn differently, helping them not just survive school, but actually start to understand how their brains work and how to use that to their advantage. What I love most about Kate is that she's not about cookie cutter study skills or forcing square pegs into round holes. She's all about helping kids who learn differently find strategies that actually make sense for their brains and teaching parents how to stop spinning their wheels trying to fix things that were never broken. Today, we're digging into the real stuff. How to educate without burning out. How to support your child's learning at home without turning every single homework session into a battleground. And how to work with schools so your kid doesn't get lost in the system. So buckle up. For the love of everything holy, pour another cup and get ready to feel seen. Because this conversation with Kate is about to give you both the validation and game plan you've been looking for. Let's welcome Kate to the mic. Kate, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Me too. Thank you. So I would love to know, was there a pivotal moment that led you on this journey, or did you know all along that you would end up here?
Oh man, I always say, if you told me that this is where I would be, I would probably have laughed at you. I mean, it probably would have been really unbelievable at the time. And I feel like there have been like a couple of those moments, but in each of them, that has led me to like where I really feel like I belong and can serve best. It was that same kind of feeling from, one of my high school teachers who was like my favorite all-time teacher, and telling me that I should be a teacher because I had nice handwriting, not because I could do math, which I ended up teaching math. And then just going into like deeper into the special education advocacy within the school route. When I started that, I wasn't even a parent. I didn't even have kids. And, fast forward a couple years and I was navigating it not only as a professional, but on the other side as a parent as well. And then, again, as my husband and I are both in public education, or I was, he still is, but to transition out of it and to have access and opportunity to these different worlds of what else is out there has just been really eye-opening and really transformative for my work.
And how did you find that your background in math and special ed lead you to, I guess, having an inside perspective on what you do now?
Yeah, so the math thing, like I have always been a numbers girl. Like I remember numbers really well. People are always amazed. Like we would go to make a call to a parent and I'd like rattle off the number and they'd be like, Yeah. And I'm like, well, don't test me because like we're calling a parent. So like maybe look it up just in case.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like that pattern seeking um skill came really easily to me. And I think that it was more easily adapted to, say, like the math domain than some of the others. I also, for math, I went into it knowing a lot of kids didn't like it, like the course, or, you don't hear a lot of kids say like, I don't like English, or like, I don't like, I mean, some kids don't like to read, but a lot of kids are, I don't like math, or I'm not good at math, like just full stop. Um, Going into it, I knew that, and I still went into it. And I think that a big piece of it was I wanted to give them what I felt like throughout the years I didn't have, which was sometimes like the step-by-step explanations of things. I think a lot of times there were like, if there was like a jump in steps, like, okay, we're here, but now, ta-da, the end. I was like, but wait, how did you get there? And I wanted to know like those steps. And I felt like that was like a piece that was missing throughout like my educational career in math. So that was really who I wanted to be as a math teacher. Applying that to like where I am now, I think, even when I was in the school setting, there was always a big piece of me that was um, trying to make sense of things for the parents and really making sure that they were educated on their rights, because they're putting when you are sitting there as the gatekeeper of, say, like an IEP, that individualized education program for your child who's receiving special education services.
Mm.
When you're sitting there as that gatekeeper, and that, we're all a team and we're all equal members of that team, but you are, again, gatekeeper. There's no other way to say it. Like, you're the one typing it in and kind of running the meeting. There are parents that are putting like their full trust in you, to do right by their child, because they are trusting you and the fact that you've been through education, the rules, the regulations, the policies, the law, and also that moral and ethical piece that you're going to do right by them,
Yeah.
because there are so many like constraints that come up from like this, especially the public school setting.
Yeah. I feel like, and this is a sidebar, and maybe I'm just further along in it and I don't remember the beginning, but I feel like parents feel so disempowered in those meetings and they don't realize the power that they hold. I
Yeah.
don't know why, but it seems like parents are very timid going into IEP meetings and they don't want to ask questions. And they just, like you said, they're just trusting the person writing it out that everything will work out. And I don't know why parents are like that. They don't want to ask questions or shake things up. But me, I'm like, what does this mean? I need to know
Yeah.
what
I
this
need to
means.
know.
Yeah.
And like, so valid, right? Like, there I think it's this perfect storm of things. I think you have parents who are like, first of all, in the thick of it at home, especially when you're talking about like our neurodivergent population. Um, you don't know what their house looks like. And so many times, like the house, like the home setting and the school setting could be vastly different. Like, you could be seeing, they say you're seeing two different kids, but really like what you're seeing is the, presentation of whatever's going on in where they're comfortable sharing it or how they're comfortable
Yeah.
sharing it. It's not that it's not there, right? We don't see that here. You hear that all the time. But you have this situation where, like, first and foremost, there is this isolation, I think, and this overwhelm that parents face, whether they have a formal diagnosis or they're going for a diagnosis, or they're not, or they're not even pursuing one, but they know that something is just different and
Yeah.
harder. So I think that, where are these parents finding the time to educate themselves and watch the trainings or do the, like the professional parent development that would really be required to have an understanding even close to the school, team members? And I think that almost starts that feeling of like, I'm not an equal member, or like, I am trusting you to do right by me because, when you have a member of the team that's having an off day, like you do pick up that slack and you do kind of carry them along. I just think too often that's not necessarily what happens for people and for parents and families. And I think that, parents are just really unaware of a lot of their rights. And again, without like, that was always the role that I took of like, I'm a firm believer that if schools are going, if they're following the rules, if they're following the law, then they wouldn't care if parents were educated on on special ed code or what their children are entitled to. Because if you're doing everything like on the up and up, like you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, agreed. So I guess I need to back up for just a second. And for our listeners who are brand new or who are still timid and not ready to jump in, what does neuroaffirming mean in the context of supporting our kiddos?
So neuroaffirming, I always like to kind of partner neuroaffirming with that strengths-based like language. So this is not at all like putting on rose-colored glasses. I want to be really clear about that because I think that is one of probably the biggest misconceptions out there when you start talking about neuroaffirming practices or strengths-based practices, that we're just ignoring the difficult things or the areas of weakness or growth opportunity, and we're just going to kind of stick them over here and we're going to make excuses for why. What I always say is it's neuroaffirming and being strengths based is really looking at your child from a really holistic approach of we all have a different wiring. We all have, differences in our like base neurology, and there is no right or wrong. There is what the construct of like what a lot of our systems in the world have been set up as, which doesn't always align with our neurodivergent learners, but there is no right or wrong because the world wasn't necessarily set up for our neurodivergent learners. We then have to kind of bridge that gap. And when we bridge that gap, I think it's really important that we come at it from a perspective where we are not attempting to fix we're not attempting to fix and we're not attempting to cure, because there's nothing to cure. It is not, it is not a disease. It is not something that we turn on and off. It's not something that afflicts us, right? We really stay away from that pathologizing language. And instead, we take a deficit and we decide how to work on that or how to approach it. And we do that with something that the child is really, really good at or something that they prefer. Like, what conditions need to happen in order to make this task either more tolerable or, more achievable. That's what we're really looking at when we're talking about neuroaffirming and strengths-based practices. It's about supporting the child and meeting them where they're at and moving them forward, not fixing.
Okay, mamas of sensory-seeking, constantly moving, touch-craving kiddos, listen up, because I've found the holy grail of calm. It's called Ted Kangaroo, and they make sensory products that are actually beautiful and built to last longer than my patients on a Monday morning. But the real MVP? The Sensory Squeeze Seat. It's this genius compression chair that literally feels like a hug for your kid's nervous system. My son says it's like a great hug that rocks. And honestly, he's not wrong. It gives just the right amount of deep pressure without making him feel trapped. And here's the thing, every single kid that comes to our house, they all want to turn every single time. It's washable because kids, It's sturdy, and it's become our go-to chill spot for meltdowns, homework, and those 5 minutes before bedtime chaos moments. So if you've got a sensory kiddo who needs comfort, grounding, or just a little peace in their body, go check out Ted Kangaroo. They're out here helping our kids feel safe, supported, and seen, one squishy hug chair at a time. I love that so much, and I will be very honest with you. Until just a few months ago, when I had Dr. Willow Jenkins on the show, I was framing ADHD for my kid as like a superpower. And she kind of brought me back down to earth and was more along the lines of you. His ADHD is not necessarily a superpower, but in that he has strengths that will be beneficial to him. So, along those same lines, I guess how does strength-based approach differ from traditional methods or what I was doing in the past?
Well, and listen, to be fair, I think that I just want to put this out there. Like, I think when you are a parent on this parenting journey, right? Like, first, I think there is most definitely like I think every parent has expectations of like who their child is going to be and what they're going to do. So like whether it's the dad who like is like my kid's going to be like baseball player, that's very stereotypical, or like the mom who's like I'm going to go shopping with my daughter, right? Like it's stereotypical because there are these stereotypes that are out there for like what these typical situations would be. I
Yeah,
mean, you see it all the time. Like look at any baby clothes, it's daddy's big slugger, or like mommy's shopping partner. Like they're adorable and they're cute,
yeah,
but we're like unconsciously or subconsciously like putting that out there, that is like what our expectations are for it.
yeah,
And I think that any parent again kind of gets brought back down to earth and reality many times over with all their kids. But I think that parents of our neurodivergent kids, that happens to a greater degree and probably like more often, because even the approach or who we thought we were going to be as parents is different. Not only our child being different, which I think happens like for everyone.
yeah,
It requires like a more finessed and nuanced approach that isn't necessarily always like socially accepted too. People are looking at you, or people are judging you, or people are commenting on how you're parenting. I think we as parents of neurodivergent kids get that a lot more than others.
for sure.
Um, but that like to so I just think we have to have grace for ourselves. That was my point with that, because even this being like my professional and my personal passion, in both realms, like there are still things that I have changed my perspective on, or have gotten, like brought back down. And I think that's important, because it means that we're still open to learning and,
Yeah,
to being wrong, and to learning. To your question, I think that the traditional approach is, in the special education world and in the world of IEPs, it's called the deficit based approach. So we're looking at, I remember a situation came up. This was recently that happened, and we were sitting in a meeting, and the child was actually present at the meeting, and the language of how the teachers described that child was raw. Like I was uncomfortable, like sitting there, like listening to it. Even had the child not been there, I would have been uncomfortable listening to it. But with them there, oh my gosh, like it's like somebody, like a teacher wrote that, like holy. And a lot of the things that came up were like, off task all the time, or a loner, or like can't sit still, all these things that like there's some stat out there. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's like for an ADHD child by the age of like 10, and I don't want to misquote it, but the amount of negative feedback that child has received is massive,
yeah,
and I think some of it's unintentional, and I think some of it is probably out of frustration, but I do think a lot of it is unintentional, and that's where we can do better with our language. So instead of saying that the student is like constantly off task, we can say that, the student has a passion for, you know, learning their preferred topics, or, really deep diving into what they want to do or how they want to do it.
Yeah.
Now, is that something that we have to address? Yeah, in certain situations, absolutely. Again, we're not putting those rose-colored glasses on it to say like it's okay that, he's reading about you know, black holes when we are learning about, the 19th century. But um, it should tell us, it should inform us on how we approach that student and what we can work with within that. Same way, like the comment that had come up about a student like being a loner, which I did not like that word at all, like hurts coming out. Um, why can't we say something like student prefers working independently when given the option, or does best when working independently? Because it's really kind of the same thing in a lot of ways when we're talking about classwork.
Yeah.
Um, that also tells the teacher that like, hey, maybe forced group work isn't, like, my question, especially with school, always comes back to like, is this what we're assessing, or is this what we're like looking for mastery for? So if we're not looking to assess how students work in groups at that moment, then why are we pushing group work? Let the kids do their own thing. So that's really kind of how we can look at um, moving from that deficit-based language to that strength-based language.
I will be super honest. That statistic, I think I read it and they were being more conservative, but they said that neurodivergent children are redirected up to 6 times more than their peers. And around that same time, my son started the I'm a bad kid thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't blame it 100% on the teachers, even though I felt like they should be further ahead of me than I was as a new neurodivergent ADHD mom. But I think we're all learning that redirection can be positive and it can be gentle and it doesn't have to be so, why can't you just, I think we're all learning that. And I think what you said about giving myself and sometimes his teachers grace, I could work on more.
I think we all can. I think we all can. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's, when we look at like the other way is like looking at moving from compliance to connection. Like, so, because at the end of the day, like, and again, this is like any parent, I feel like a lot of the stuff that comes up for, our parents of neurodivergent children, it's like regular parenting stuff times 10. You know what I mean? Like everyone goes through it to a degree, but it's so magnified for us. And it's being that it's magnified, there's like more pressure on it. Like you always feel like you're in like this pressure cooker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
This is another side note. Me and my kiddo are working on advocating respectfully. I actually love that he stands up for himself. He is 100% against injustice and for his own autonomy, and I hear that. However, your delivery can use some work on me because the way you are coming across is super disrespectful. But I'm trying to remember in that moment, he's learning too. He's never learned how to advocate respectfully. And it's my job to stop taking it personally and maybe give him some time to learn to say it a little bit more kindly.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I laugh because like I could probably pick off the top of my head like 20 times that this has come up in the last month in my house where
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God, it hits you. I think that it is like, it's great when our kids advocate for themselves. And I think that like generationally, it's also a thing.
Yeah.
there was just this, like, I don't know if you saw it, but there was just this trend, and it was like the parents started the sentence, like did a sentence starter, and they were all like cliches from like what would be like our childhoods. And then they let their children finish them. And like you ask any adult, and there's like very these sentences, whereas you ask your kids, and like the answers are just so much more gentle and like loving than than what we than what we
Yeah.
experience. um but yeah, that comes up all the time, and I think that that's where, like, to bring in another thing, like the idea of like social skills. Like the old trend was, these social skill training groups, and very like very formal, like we're going to bring you together, this group of kids that we've identified this thing for, and we are going to work on this. And I like, full disclosure, like way back when, I was like, yes, I want my child to have that because I want them to have opportunities to practice and whatever. And, unknowingly, that was, again, one of those moments where you get brought back down to reality, because as the research continued to come out from our, actually autistic community and our greater neurodivergent community, it was like, you are teaching that compliance to neurotypicality. And that's not what we want to do. Like, we want to do the opposite of that. So that, that causes a shift. But then people are left with like, okay, if not that, then what? And I think that that's where you have these moments, right? Like these in the moment things that come up, where you have the ability to talk through it and talk about how, although you don't require a finesse with your delivery, some people do. And I'm not telling you you have to do it per se, but I am telling you that you have to know how it will be received
Mm.
when it happens, right? So I think that, and that also really, like, I think it's more successful when we do things that way, because it is in the moment. Like, it is exactly, um, you know, what's coming up. Just like a very small story, because this literally came up in my house yesterday. My sons are a year apart, so they share like a lot of friends. My middle is diagnosed autistic. We are definitely a neurodivergent family. And although, like, although formalized diagnoses may or may not be there for people, like, we always approach it with, again, that, like, that neurodivergent friendly lens. So I'm talking to the two boys, and my older had like a very impromptu birthday party this weekend, and they were all playing together. And I was shocked actually at how long and how well they did get together, because they have very different profiles, and it's like best friends, worst enemies within 5 seconds flat.
Mm.
And afterward, my older came to me and he was like, sometimes my other son, like, sometimes he'll take it too far, or he makes a joke that, like, maybe, like, it doesn't land, and then, like, it's uncomfortable, and like it really came down to, like, he was embarrassed. And I was actually really grateful that it came up, maybe not in the way it did, because again, it didn't come up nicely or, like, very kindly to one another at the beginning of it. But I was glad it did come up, because we were able to have the conversation about how, in the moment, opportunities are so much more helpful. Because for me, like, this is the example of, like, out of the moment, right? It's 4 days later. You've now been, like, sitting with this, and it's obviously been bothering you. You pull it out at this moment where you're really frustrated, and now it comes out in a way that you didn't necessarily mean, to the level of, that you didn't mean to. And I'm also, it's hard for me to even address it, because I don't know the exact joke that didn't land, or I don't know the exact thing that happened, and I can navigate it from a very generalized standpoint, but I can't navigate it specifically. And a lot of times our kiddos have trouble generalizing. Like, it's hard to take something from the specific and then
Yeah.
branch out. So my older one's like, okay, well, then what? Like, how am I supposed to do it? And I'm like, well, that's a great question. And I said, honestly, like it needs to happen in the moment. Like if it's something where you need to get mom or dad, like obviously get mom or dad. I said, but there's a piece too where you can say something like, and you have to say it kindly and you have to work on your delivery. But there's nothing wrong with you pulling your brother aside and saying, like, hey, like that joke didn't land, or like, maybe like we need to take it down a notch because he may be having trouble navigating like that situation or that peer interaction. And you're not telling him who to be, but you're also telling him like maybe something that he's not reading in how it's being received.
Mm.
And I said, that might be a lot more helpful because not only is it coming from you and not a peer, who he doesn't trust as much, and it's happening like right then. So like he can adjust in the moment as well, and it gives him the practice. He doesn't have to wait till the next time and then try to remember back to this situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge piece of it because we know those neurodiverse brains, they don't need the small talk.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's blunt and direct and it just comes right out.
If you've ever watched your kiddo struggle to figure out why other kids won't share their Legos, or why sarcasm flies over their little head like a rogue Nerf dart, this next resource is going to make your jaw drop. Meet Michelle Garcia Winter. She's not just a speech and language pathologist, or with a master's degree. She's the CEO and founder of the Social Thinking Methodology, and a total game changer in how kids, and let's be real, parents too, learn the unspoken rules of social life. Michelle specializes in social cognition, basically the brain's people skills, and she's built tools, strategy, and resources that help our ADHD kiddos crack the code on friendships, conversations, and self-regulation without making them feel broken or less than. If your child struggles with reading the room, making friends, or handling the roller coaster of social life, Michelle's work is a lifeline. You can learn more at socialthinking.com, or you can click the link in the podcast description, because thriving socially isn't about faking normal, it's about understanding it. Okay, ADHD parents, if you've ever said, I just need one thing that actually helps us stay on track, I've got you covered. Meet Pop Sugar Cafe Printables, the creative powerhouse turning chaos into calm, one gorgeous, brain-friendly printable at a time. Pop Sugar Cafe isn't just about cute designs, though they are stunning. It's about giving neurodivergent families tools that work. Visual schedules, emotion charts, routine planners, and positive reinforcement systems that make everyday life feel doable. These printables aren't built for Pinterest perfection. They're built for the real life mornings with missing shoes, cold coffee, and a kid who suddenly hates pants. So if you're ready to swap the daily overwhelm for something that actually supports your family's rhythm, check out Pop Sugar Cafe Printables, because structure can be beautiful, functional, and ADHD friendly all at once. For 36 years, I thought I just didn't have a filter, but as it turns out, I'm missing the executive function that allows me to filter what I blurt out.
Yeah.
But you just taught me something. I am very guilty of listening to my son, have conversations with his friends, and then later saying, I don't think that was appropriate. But I actually just did an episode on this about how our kids live in the now. So when I'm waiting that time frame to address it later, he's probably forgotten what even happened, and I'm wasting both of our time. So I will work on that.
Absolutely. So listen, always a work in progress.
Yeah. So I got us way off track. I'm sorry. My ADHD brain will go literally everywhere.
I will follow you down any rabbit hole.
I do always try to circle back, but luckily I have a list of things I really want to ask.
All right.
So I know we've already talked a little bit about how some parents come in a little too timid or have not had the time to prepare. And then there's parents like me who come in very hot for no reason. So, what are some common challenges parents face when navigating the special education system? And how can we advocate more effectively than coming in hot for our kids?
I listen, coming in hot, like I can appreciate that because you care, right? Like there is a deep care for your child. I tell every parent, like at every meeting that I go to, like, you are your child's best advocate. Because at the end of the day, aside from the child and, him or herself, you know them best. Like, yes, they're at school for 8 hours a day, 180 days a year, whatever, but you're their mom or dad. Like you are their caregiver, you are their guardian. So you know them best. And I think that anytime you are advocating, while we can always like adjust and, and make, you know, make those tweaks, like I always rather the parent come in hot than not come in at all. Right. So I think that's number one. Um, I think that most importantly, ask the question. Like, ask the question because I would love to say, like, research the thing, right? Or go read about this thing. But for me to give you homework to do on top of like parenting wouldn't be fair. All right. Just wouldn't be realistic.
Yeah.
So if you have, that time where you're meeting and now you're sitting there for however long, ask the question.
Hmm.
Because it is an opportunity to get an answer that at least when you're now looking outside of the meeting, like you're double checking that answer. You're not like researching it for the first time. So definitely ask the question. I would say, so I am of a firm belief and, similar to like what you just disclosed about like the filter, like for me, it's that maybe it's the same thing. Like there's a bluntness sometimes that like can't be helped. Um, so, the idea that there is a reason that there is a special education code. So, I obviously operate under New Jersey's code like most regularly and most consistently because that's where I'm at. But I know that different states have different things, but ultimately we're all covered by IDEA. So whether a state wants to make it more specific, it can't make it less specific. Like it can't offer less. So just looking at the IDEA piece of it, you have these rights and responsibilities, but rights. And I think that, there is like, I know New Jersey has one, it's like a cheat sheet. It's called PRISE. So it's like parental rights in special education. There's probably something similar for each state, Oregon, like that IDEA. There is a reason that there is a law and a code to follow. And I believe one of the biggest reasons that that exists is to be able to depersonalize the whole thing. Because I was advocating for a parent. So I wasn't the case manager, but the case manager said to me, she's like, well, don't you we're just going to do it and we're not going to write it in. And I was like, no, we're not, we're not going to do that. We're definitely not going to do that. I said, and she got somewhat defensive and she framed it as like, well, I love this student. Like, I don't like essentially like, don't you trust me? And I literally was just like, this isn't about trust and it's not about how much I like you. I can like you. I can not like you. I can trust you. I cannot trust you. But at the end of the day, the law is the law and there's a reason for it. And it allows us to depersonalize this whole thing. It's not about me and you and our relationship. It's about what that child is entitled to. And if they're entitled to it, then it goes in and it goes in writing, which probably leads me to my next thing, which is if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Like if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. No matter how much you love your child's teacher, no matter how much you respect your child's aide, no matter how much the school has tried to help you from your perspective, get it in writing. And, one of the, like, I would say red flags is if they're constantly calling you. You
Mm.
email in and they say, "Oh, I'll give you a call about that." Or like, "Oh, I'll follow up on that when I see you," right? It could even be in person. If that happens, okay, fine. Like, you're going to get hit with it sometimes, and that's okay, but have a plan. So take a couple notes on that call. Like, remember the main reason for that call, because when you're able to sit down, especially if you're out and about, like if you're out and about and you can't take those notes, I would say, like, I can't discuss this right now. We're going to have to set up a time to discuss it, because then you're testing your own memory. And I don't know about any of you, but that's not happening with as many balls as I have in the air. So set a time that you're going to be home. If you're home and you can take a couple of those notes, take a couple of those notes, nothing like huge, right? And then follow up with an email to whoever called, and simply, following up on our conversation. Hi, whoever, it is. I just wanted to follow up on our conversation to make sure I understood you correctly. I heard this, this, and this. If any of these, and you want to phrase it so that, like, if you don't get a response, like, it's still telling you something, right? So if any of this is inaccurate, please don't hesitate to reach out to, to adjust or tell me where I have it wrong. And, then you wait and see. If you get something back, you get something back, you deal with it. But if you don't get anything back, then, like, you've essentially, put it in writing what did happen on that phone call or in that face-to-face meeting. And then I had one more, but I lost it. Put it in writing. I don't know. If it comes back to me, I'll jump back to it. But I think those are the big main things.
Maybe this will jog your memory because this is brand new to me, maybe within the last 6 months. So this podcast has been beneficial to me so much already. But can you explain the importance of the educational assessments and the data that is coming from that and how parents can utilize it? Because up until just a few months ago, I was not aware that we were even to be involved with that data or those assessments. And now I'm reframed to think that it's probably the most important thing that we can familiarize ourselves with for these meetings.
Oh my God, Ken. I mean, we could talk about that for like a whole day, because that, like, that is my jam. Going back, like, I didn't even mention, like, that was really where, like, the math side of me kind of came up. So New Jersey has this thing called an LDT-C. It's a Learning Disabilities Teacher Consultant. It's a postmaster's certificate. And it essentially allows you to sit on a child study team as, like, the educational piece of it. So a lot of states do not have this person. They have the school psychologist. They may have a social worker. A lot of times a special education teacher acts as a case manager and, like, the keeper of the IEP. In New Jersey, we do things a little bit differently. So we have a school psychologist who would do the psychological evaluation, which essentially gets you a full scale IQ. You have a social worker, a school social worker, who's really there kind of to for a lot of reasons, but on the mental health side, to, like, tell the student's story, if you will, and to get that kind of information. And then the LDT-C, who has had to have teaching experience and this, additional training. We do the educational assessments, which are, different from the psychological. We're looking at the achievement. So we're looking at, like, the, where the rubber meets the road kind of thing. Like, how is this happening in the classroom? What impact are we seeing? And we look at all facets. So reading, writing, math, oral language. We look at how we write, how we speak, how we take in information, listening comprehension. And then, of course, you have your other specialists, speech and language. They have their own evaluation, occupational therapy, physical therapy. And then there are some out there that are probably less common, but also relevant. The high level and the big takeaway is that a school district has the responsibility to assess a student or evaluate a student in all areas of suspected disability. So if you come into that initial meeting and you're saying, my child has difficulty reading, that's going to drive your evaluation choices one way. Whereas if you say, I'm coming in because I'm really concerned about my child's ability to focus and attend to classwork, that's going to drive it a different way. Again, it varies from state to state, but essentially a school district cannot diagnose. We're not doctors. Even if you have a doctorate, you're not a medical doctor. So a lot of times we can identify, but we can't diagnose. So we can identify a specific learning disability. We could identify, difficult communication impairment. We cannot say diagnose autism or diagnose ADHD. But if that is the suspected area of disability, then a school district has the responsibility to get your child to an evaluation that can have that happen. So this is where a lot of times parents would want to ask for either a neuropsychological or a neurodevelopmental. A lot of times, like a psychiatric will come up, a psychiatric evaluation, anything that's going to bring them to, say, like a doctor who can give a diagnosis based on input from the team. So that's number one. If you come in and you say, like, I have concerns about reading and attention and focus, then, again, you're looking at all of them. So now you might have more. Some students may have 2 evaluations that are done at the beginning. Some may have 6 or 7. It just really depends on, what the need is. Fast forwarding to those results. Yeah, parents, you absolutely have the right to that information, number one, and also the right to the information in a way that you understand it. Those evaluations, they can be daunting, they can be really overwhelming, and depending on who does it, like, it could be full of jargon and really just information that you don't have a point of reference for. The big takeaways are that you have the right to review it prior to the meeting. And that's important because if you want to sit with it, if you want to Google, if you want to take it, if you want to phone a friend and ask somebody who may be in the field, whether it's a special education teacher, an advocate you may know, that's never a bad idea. And it gives you that time to really kind of go through and formulate your questions. At the meeting, you also have, the right for them to be explained to you, and to be, described in a way that makes sense and is really parent friendly. And, whether or not you feel like that is happening, I always encourage parents to ask, a couple questions that would that would work no matter what, right? So one would be like, if they give you some number, say they say, oh, reading, he scored an 82, right? Like, that means nothing to me as a parent, as a teacher, anything. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You want to ask, what am I going to see in the classroom with a score like that? What classroom implications are we going to see with that? And then really the follow-up of, how can we support that in the classroom? What supports, what accommodations, what programming can we put in with a score like that, especially if the eligibility has already been determined. So I think those questions, again, never bad questions to ask, and ask as many as you can until you're through, because There's this misconception that like you have 40 minutes or you have an hour. You have as long as you need. Code does not dictate how long a meeting lasts. Just because they get sub coverage for one period does not mean that your meeting has to end there, regardless of what they say. You can most definitely ask, you know, I still have more questions. I'd like to come back together as a team to discuss this. It's really, really important on your initial IEP. Sorry, I'm going to talk about going down a rabbit hole. On your initial IEP, the one that, it's new, it doesn't go into effect until it's signed, right? So this is the one where you as a parent really have the most control over what goes in. Subsequent IEPs, again, state by state, the way New Jersey works, parents have 15 days to review it. If they do not object to it or disagree with it, it automatically goes into effect. So if a school says, hey, we want to do A, and a parent says, I disagree with it, I want to do B, if they don't object and file, say, for, mediation, due process, that whole, that's a whole nother thing, then the school district can put it into effect in 15 days. So that first IEP, whether it takes one meeting or 15 meetings, anyone from a school is like, oh my God, I can't believe she just said that. I don't care. It's like that secret of the trade. Okay. Whether it's one meeting or 15 meetings, you absolutely have the right to continue so that you are in agreement and you get as much input into that IEP as you can.
Okay, parents, if your Christmas shopping list looks like toys that don't end in tears, meltdowns, or glitter explosions, listen up. Play Therapy Supply is basically Santa's workshop for neurodivergent kids, but with actual purpose behind the play. We're talking fidgets that calm instead of overstimulate, social skills games that don't feel like homework, and sensory tools that help your kid's nervous system chill the heck out. If you've got an ADHD kiddo who's curious, creative, and occasionally climbing your curtains, this is where you'll find gifts that meet them where they are and build the skills they need. So skip the cheap plastic chaos this year. Hit playtherapysupply.com and fill that cart with gifts that actually make sense for your beautiful, busy-brained kiddo. Because a regulated kid is the best gift you can get this season. Agreed. So much. I am aggressively nodding for the listeners that cannot see me. I have two things that I will add to that. One I actually learned on this podcast, and that was Jim Burgoon came on and he highly recommended that for those of us who still have kids in elementary school, to get it written in before middle and high school. And the other thing is that when you ask for these meetings, they have a limited amount of time to respond and get that meeting set up. And I think that a lot of parents do not know that.
Nope.
And they're just going with the flow. And then by the time comes, it's the end of the year. And then they say, oh, let's wait till, next year. We're already at summertime. Absolutely. So those are two very important things that I've learned within the last year or so.
And I'll piggyback on that it goes back to that putting it in writing. If a parent requests a meeting and it's in writing, they can't deny it. If you say it, they can be like, oh, okay, because then there's no record of it. But as soon as you put that in writing, that starts that clock. That starts that timeline. So, that's always a good thing.
So I could do this all day. I will waste your whole day. I'm trying to be respectful of your
could
time.
Too. Okay.
But I have one question, and then I want you to tell the listeners about your upcoming events.
Yeah.
At the beginning, you said that you have a more holistic approach. I would like to know how you integrate that with the science to support your families.
It's a great question. So I think that when you look at, I think it starts in explaining those evaluations, right? Because you are essentially going from a bunch of numbers to, what that means. So you're talking about what you're going to be seeing, what implications you're going to be seeing. If you're getting, if parents out there, like school evaluations are going to look very different than say private evaluations, which is a whole nother topic I won't go into, but I'll err on the side of a private evaluation because it's going to be a lot more like comprehensive. So when you have that comprehensive, say neuropsychological evaluation that tells you about all of the cognitive processes and all of the education, all of that stuff, it's going to look at the attention and the memory and the processing, and it's going to really deep dive into all of that. That's also going to inform your parenting at home. Right. So it's not just how we see it at school. This is, if a student can't follow multi-step directions at school, what makes a parent think that they're going to be able to do it at home, or vice versa, right? So that's where, again, parents, you're really, really important in that process, because things that you see at home, like, oh my God, I tell them 3 things to do, and I end up having to go step by step and show them a picture, or demonstrate it, or every time I tell them to do something, I have to model how to do it. Ding ding ding. Like, for me, we got to get modeling in the IEP then, right? Like, we got to get that show and tell piece of it. I will drop this here because I think it's relevant. Somebody gave me the analogy that for our neurodivergent brains, this was specific to ADHD, but I think it works like whatever. We know that they do better with pictures. We know that the neurodivergent brain does better with visuals, visual cues, visual context. And it's almost as if I told you to go make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you didn't know what it was. Now, I know it's really hard to pretend that you don't know what it is now that we know, but like, imagine not knowing, and you send your child off to do that. They may come back with like the peanut butter on the outside. They might come back with one piece of bread, with peanut butter on one side and jelly on the other. The different, what you would get would be like wild and drastically different, right?
Yeah.
So that is truly like what happens when you give an ADHD brain an instruction that maybe they're not as familiar with. So it's our job to give them the picture of that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So like a finished model to work towards. And I love the question, what does done look like? Because done to them, your child, any child, may be very, very different from what you're done for the task or the chore looks like. So I think that, going back to the specific question, I think that's really it, that you take this data, but you really have to look at where I don't want to say affects, but like where it pops up in everyday life, whether that's at school or at home, because ultimately we're always looking at the future for like continued education, future employment, and daily independent living skills. Like, those are the 3 big things that we're always working towards. We're not looking for independence, we're looking for autonomy. We're looking for kids to be able to know and choose and be supported in the way that they need to be successful. So I think that that's really it. Taking the numbers, but taking them out of it to make it more relatable.
Girl, that was for me. I did not know that was going to be directly for me, but that is because very recently I had someone on the show and he said something that was just an offhanded remark, but it kind of like hit home for me because I am a mom raising a boy. So I'm kind of like doing everything for him. I'm setting him up for failure in the real world. He basically said, "You're raising someone's husband." And I'm setting the bar incredibly high because nobody's going to come in and take care of him that way. So over the summer, we're going to work on him becoming more independent and working on chores. And the modeling part that was for me. I have to show him each step and probably multiple times before I can expect any real results. So thank you for that. That was directly for me. I'm going to write that down. And now I would love for you to tell our listeners about your very exciting upcoming events.
Yes. So I am very excited in the work that I've done actually since leaving, the work that I did in the public school, but also since transitioning out into the private sector. I have really organically identified, that parents post-diagnosis of, neurodivergence, they want to know more. Like they want to know more. And I think that a lot of parents walk into that diagnosis day thinking that like, yes, this is the day that I get an answer. Like I'm going to know. And instead, you walk out and you feel like you've been like dropped in an ocean with like no lifeboat around, not you might have like one of those like circular lifesaver buoys, but that's
Hmm.
about it. Like there's no land in sight and you start swimming, right? So, or at least you're trying to tread water at
Yeah.
the very minimum. I think that there we build our kids village, we build their support system, we find people to support, we find therapists, we do that for our kids because we will go to the end of the earth for them. I think sometimes we forget about ourselves and the fact that by learning as much as we can, um, we do better for them, and there's so many things out there that we just don't know. So if you don't, you don't know what you don't know. And at the same time, these communities that live on Facebook and other places, obviously, but Facebook is a big one. And these people flock, right? These parents flock to these groups. And they're wonderful. They're wonderful for feeling validated that you are not alone. But a lot of times it's like parents leading parents who, you're all just desperate to try whatever you can. So I am so excited to announce that I have created a virtual community that takes it off of Facebook, but still exists in a private space and allows for kind of both of those things. So it allows for the support and knowing you're not alone, but it's also there for snippets of, if you need a quick win or you want to know something more about the school system, or, you're really having trouble with, a a kid putting pants on or, or socks on, like the sensory piece, like whatever it is, there's going to be a resource library. I'm going to be doing different master classes. I'm so excited. I'm going to be bringing people on to talk about the things because, again, I truly believe in staying in your lane. So if I'm not an expert in it, I'll find somebody that is. And I'm just really, really, it is so near and dear to my heart. This one is, I'm just so excited to serve the community that I am also in. And I think that's what really, that is my uniqueness in this, that I live it and I teach about it. So I am opening that. I wanted to make it really accessible, so I have a couple tiers. I don't want it to be something that families can't access because there's too much out there that financially is inaccessible for families. So I really took that into consideration. And I am so excited to, announce that it's open and accepting members, and we're doing our founding member launch.
Oh, that's so exciting. You
Yeah.
are too kind. You won't say it, but I will say it for our listeners. Most of those parent groups are the blind leading the blind. We do not know. Like you said before, you get the diagnosis and we're all Googling and we're just regurgitating myths and things that we've heard. And I think it's very important to have someone who's actually in it and knows what they're talking about. So I am very excited for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I am too.
And I believe you have a quiz.
I do. So this it's specific, a lot of my work leans more towards the autistic brain style, but I think that there is no harm when we approach any neurodivergence with this neuroaffirming and strengths-based lens. So I don't want anyone to think like, oh, I can't do that because of that. So, we have our love languages that there's books written about it and all of that. And I kind of took that and spun it, and it's out there, but I kind of made it my own. That there are these autistic love languages too. So going back to the communication piece with our kids and how sometimes it comes out and it's blunt and it's direct, or it's not necessarily what you'd expect. I looked for different ways that our kids, they're tokens of connection, right? Like how they are attempting to connect with us. So you can take the quiz. It is based parents, like it's written in the perspective of a parent taking it for their child. There's nothing wrong with having your child take it as well. My 3 did it. It will send you the results and basically give you like an overview of how your child might be trying to connect with you based on their brain style and where their strengths and differences lie within that.
I love that so much. I would love to take that, although I'm pretty sure his form of love and communication is wrestling, but I may be surprised. Kate, I did not get to cover half of what I wanted to today, so I would love to have you back on for a part 2 at some time in the future.
Absolutely. I would love for that too.
I always ask for a short one-liner for parents who are struggling currently, and it's always directly for me. So I would love if you had anything to leave our listeners with, what would it be?
I do. Growth happens long before it's seen. So keep watering.
Ooh, girl.
Keep watering.
That is so good. And for me, as always.
I think we all need to hear it sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Thank you.
You plant that little seed and a lot happens before it breaks the surface.
Yes, like the bamboo tree. I love that so much. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Phew. Okay, if you're like me, you're sitting there with 3 new notes in your phone, 1 tear in your eye, and the sudden urge to email your kid's teacher right now. Take a second and let me know in the comment what your new notes in your phone are, because I would love to hear them. Kate has such a gift for cutting through the noise. No guilt trips, no jargon, just straight up clarity about how to help our kids, and let's be real, ourselves, navigate this wild neurodivergent parenting ride. If this conversation hit home for you, and how could it not, go check out Kate's work in the show notes. Her coaching and resources are absolute gold, especially if you're feeling stuck in that cycle of why isn't this working? And if today's episode gave you a little hope, or even just a deep exhale, please take 5 seconds to rate the show, 5 stars obviously, because that's what helps other parents find this podcast at 2 a.m. when they're up Googling how to survive another school meeting without crying. As always, thank you for being here, thank you for showing up for your kid, and thank you for proving that chaos and caffeine can, in fact, coexist. Now go refill your mug, you've earned it. This is Chaos and Caffeine, and I'm your ADHD parenting bestie Danielle, and I'll see you back here next week where we'll probably have a lot of the same damn chaos and caffeine, but I promise to bring a new conversation. You know those nights when you're up at 2 a.m. Googling, why did my child blow up over nothing? Or how do I explain instructions that don't take off like a rocket? Meet Dr. Lorian Phillips, a clinical psychologist since 1995 and in the ADHD trenches with families since 2013. She isn't just someone who studies kids. She's raising them, parenting them, figuring this stuff out live. Dr. Phillips runs what may feel like your dream support system, an ADHD parenting course she started in 2013, plus private consults to help you read your child's wiring instead of fighting against it. She's spoken at schools from nursery to high school. She teaches ADHD families emotional regulation and all the skills that we need to feel successful and not broken. If you're overwhelmed by the constant, did I say that wrong? Moments, knowing there is a way forward with understanding, empathy, structure, and celebration, Dr. Lorian Phillips is someone you'll want in your corner. For more, check her out at adhdmanagement.co.za or click the link in the episode show notes to connect with her from wherever you are.